Welcome. Thank you. Happy Thursday. Someone, Kyla just called it Friday Junior. That's fun for me. Happy Friday Junior. Um, so we'll start with a few announcements this afternoon. It's been a long day already. So the Ecological Identity Project, you found that back there on page 70 and 71 of your journal. I just wanted to highlight, this is the capstone project for BiSci 3. So if you would like to start thinking about it, I would encourage you actually to start thinking about it and feeling your way into it. The idea that being human means being creative. So what I'm asking you to do as the capstone is to create something. So what the thing is based around how are you, specifically you, part of Earth? What part of Earth do you connect with? When do you experience feelings of connection with the natural world around you? And then use all of your capacities to create the final project. Dream, play, create, connect, discover, reflect, relate. And so it can be anything except an essay. It can be a video that you create. It can be a song that you write. I've had people learn the ukulele so that they could sing the song that they wrote for this project. So we'll be talking about this. Your TA will be talking about it as the semester goes on. I'll continue to show you some of the slides that we've looked at are people's ecological identity projects that have been created over the years. So I'll highlight those when they come up in class. So be creative. It'll be due in week 15 at your lab. That'll be the same day that you'll turn in or design your back cover according to the assignment. So this feels like far, far away, but I have found that to talk about it now helps people to have time to create. Because this week, or in this coming week, week 9, you're going to be spending some time with creating. One of your action assignment for next week is that you are going to make something. And so I include these websites, yours for the making, Instructables or Pinterest. So if you have something that you would like to learn to make, I encourage you to think about it either as something for yourself or something that will be a gift for other people. So I find it easier when I think about gifts for others that I get inspired for making. So you can make something. You can also repair something. So if you have clothing or if you have something in your world that used to be useful and now it's not because of the state that it's in, you can figure out a way for repair. Or you can upcycle something, making something new out of something old. So this is your part of your assignment in week 9 is to make, upcycle, or repair something. You'll then be showing those products, those things that you've created. You'll be showing those in the week 11 lab. So you'll be thinking about it, designing it in week 9, and then you have time to finish it up in week 11 and then show it off. So that's coming up as well. So a couple of opportunities for some creativity. So where we are today is here. Seems like an interesting place to start. This particular painting was done by an artist named John Sabraw. He lives and works in the Ohio River Valley. And he discovered that he could make his own pigments for painting by using the toxic runoff in his area. So the toxins in the Ohio River region, he then makes those into the pigments that he uses for his art. The yellows and reds are from the oxidized sludge of abandoned coal mines. Heavy metals are coming from the water. And so rather than ordering the iron oxide pigments from another country, he's using his awareness to create art, and then using his art to create awareness. So today's topic is chemicals. So to think about what chemicals are, we'll start at the very beginning, right? Chemicals, it becomes very broad. Sometimes people talk about chemicals when they mean specifically harmful chemicals, which is where we'll ultimately go today. But understanding that a chemical can be as easy as this. It's anything that has a stable form, anything that has a chemical compound that can be described and is consistent, a defined composition. So water, two H's and an O makes water a chemical. Right? We can talk about table salt, NaCl, which is another common, obviously, chemical that we use. We can talk about caffeine, which is a naturally derived chemical, right? Caffeine is coming from the tea leaves and the coffee beans because those plants don't want things to eat those parts of them. They don't want the leaves to be eaten off, the plant will die. They don't want the beans to be eaten because that's what's going to transmit all of the genetic material, right? It's going to get planted somewhere else. So caffeine is a naturally derived chemical. So we can talk about what's natural, and sometimes natural is better than man-made. Or I should say people-made. And so when we think about then we get down to something like this, household bleach, it's not found in nature, it's human made. So things that we use household bleach for, or sodium hypochlorite. Okay? So my shirt was made with bleach. It was dyed. Autumn did this for me. She painted this on this. So she painted with bleach, and then it turns out as art. Some people bleach their hair, right? We put this chemical into our swimming pools so that it can keep the water relatively safe and healthy for us. So there are these human-made chemicals, there are natural occurring chemicals, and then there's this idea of where things become harmful. So there's nature harmful chemicals. So if you think about venomous snakes, they have in their venom, there are chemicals that are harmful. So not everything that's natural is good for you. It's important to consider. And then the flip side is that sometimes, like the compound vanilla that comes from the vanilla bean, that is a very unique, it's a dwindling species. So natural vanilla is harder to come by than human-made chemical vanilla. So there are lots of ways to think about chemicals in our lives. Some are healthy, some are not. We're going to dive into some more of that as we go through. Right now, I would like you to consider where are, if you can jot in your notes, 3 places that you find harmful chemicals in your life. Harmful chemicals. And then compare your list with your neighbor.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
All right, so what do you have? Where are harmful chemicals? Where do you get exposed to those?
Fast food.
Fast food. Okay.
We talked about rat poison or like other like bleach, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah. So poisons that are put out for other purposes, but we get exposed to them. Yes.
Like car exhaust.
Car exhaust. Yeah.
Um, we were talking about like a lot of the cosmetic reasons. So like nail salons, like when you go to the nail salon and there's like acetone and stuff like that, like it's not good to be on your skin.
Yep. So when we put things on our skin, we'll be talking quite a bit about that in just a few minutes. So food, cars, things we put on our skin. She's coming.
Another one I had was like cleaning supplies for like a bathroom. Like
Mhm.
a lot of that stuff you might think is like, oh, it's helpful because it gets rid of like germs and stuff. But also you don't want to directly consume it or be in contact with some of the stuff that's in there.
Yeah, right. Very good. Yeah, so cleaning supplies. There's someone back there in the back as well. Thanks, Alexis.
You know, like when you get your lawn cut and then like afterwards they put all the stuff, on your lawn, like the pesticides, and then you gotta like take your dog to like your neighbor's lawn to go to the bathroom because you don't want them going on your lawn because there's pesticides all over it and stuff.
Right, exactly. Absorbing through their skin, right? Yeah, pesticides, herbicides, all kinds of things. So they're all over in the lives that we lead. And many of them are out there untested. So there is a threat about the chemicals that we have in our space. So we'll talk about some of these hazardous air pollutants, toxins in the car exhaust, hydrocarbons, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, benzene, particulate matter, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, volatile organic compounds, trace metals, and elements such as lead and sulfur. So as we talked about on Tuesday, the burning of fossil fuels on our planet, the main source being from transportation. It's the biggest pollution problem on our planet right now. So burning fossil fuels has generated most of the energy required to propel our cars and our businesses and the lights in our homes. So oil and gas and coal, as we saw the other day, serve about 80% of our energy needs. So as you likely know, if you inhale car exhaust for even a few minutes, then you're dead. So all of this stuff goes into our atmosphere on a daily basis. So there's that, car exhaust, vehicle exhaust. Then you mentioned all of the things that go onto and in our land. So there is the wall of death that Doug talked about in the birds class. The pesticides, the herbicides, all of the things that we put on our earth so that we can get rid of the things that bother us, the weeds and the bugs and the rats and the mice, whatever those pests are. And so an example that you might be hearing about sometimes is glyphosate, otherwise known as Roundup. It's the most common weed killer. So it's interesting because glyphosate is a chemical that disrupts the protein pathways in plants. And they have suspected for years that those pathways only exist in plants. It inhibits the plant growth, and so plants that are sprayed with it die. Animals don't have the same enzyme pathways, so they consider it safe. Except now there are more and more cases of people with cancer who have been administering this over a period of time. So there's slightly different systems there, obviously, plants and animals, and yet there are some crossovers, as we talked about. 50% of our DNA we share with bananas. So there must be some linkage. So then what happens if we want to eliminate glyphosate, take Roundup off the shelves? People are still going to want to kill weeds with something. So what's that something? Well, it's going to take glyphosate's been on the market for almost 50 years. So it's going to take a long time to figure out what the next thing is. Or we turn agriculture into all organic agriculture. And then that takes a long time to shift the systems. Organic, we'll talk about in the food class, is way lighter on the planet, but it takes a very different system than is used mostly around our country. So either way takes time and investment. So it's something to consider as we're using these chemicals. Those are the chemicals. So this is being sprayed on the corn. Then it gets into the food that we're eating as well. So some of it comes from what happens to the crops as they're out in the field. And sometimes it's things that people add to the food, maybe to improve safety or freshness or texture or taste or appearance. Sometimes the chemicals are harmful and some are not. So as we look at this picture, 5 different syrups in the back row are all things that consumed, or when you consume them, they have sodium hetamexophosphate, sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate, sucralose. The one in the front laying down is pure maple syrup. It comes straight out of the tree, gets boiled down, and then it goes into the bottle and nothing is added. So things that we're eating, our grandparents, your great-grandparents didn't eat these things. It's there for convenience. It's there because people want more and more options. We're told that some of these chemicals have side effects. Side effects just means something that might be an unintended consequence. And yet, if it's affecting, then it's affecting. Side effect makes it sound like it's not so bad, but it's still affecting, right? So what about this? What about this? Talk with your partner about what you think about bottled water.
I use it not hate I would stop using it, but it's just so bad. Like, yeah, that's yeah. How do you clean it?
There's a lot to be thought about and considered with bottled water. So that none of what I'm going to say is intended to shame anyone. This is for awareness. Right? Awareness is the key. So the idea that it comes in these plastic water bottles, we've talked about how only 9% of the plastic water bottles are getting recycled. 9% of plastics overall are getting recycled. And so the toxins that are released in the making and the disposal of them, they're not fully recyclable. So every time you take plastic and recycle it, it goes to a weaker form of plastic. So these plastic bottles can't go back to being plastic bottles. They have to go to a wimpier kind of plastic, probably plastic bags or something like that, plastic film. And then that can be recycled sometimes, very rarely, into like park benches and cool stuff like that. But more often than not, it gets thrown away. And so it goes into the landfill. The other thing that happens is that they get broken down. So when we talked about oceans, the plastic is getting broken down. They call microplastics are anything that's 5 millimeters in size, about 5 millimeters in size. What happens then to those microplastics, those itty bitty pieces, is that they continue to break down even into smaller plastics that they call nanoplastics. So nanoplastics, bottled water has been shown in an NIH study in 2024. Researchers found that on average, a liter of bottled water included about 240,000 pieces, nanoplastics, that you're consuming into your body with a liter of bottled water. Bottled water production takes up to 2,000 times more energy than tap water. And you don't know where that water's coming from. Where did it come from to go into that bottle? Many bottled water brands use the pictures on them, the pristine lakes or the rivers or the streams, the gushings, waterfalls, the snow-capped mountains. But very likely, in fact, an astounding 64% of bottled water is tap water in a bottle. That's an extensive report conducted by Food and Water Watch. Some states don't regulate what's in bottled water. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is responsible for ensuring the safety and truthful labeling. And then states are responsible for regulating water that is both packaged and sold within its borders. But 1 in 5 states don't bother doing this. So it's important to note that the federal government does not require bottled water to be safer than tap water. And then, of course, it's about 2,000 times more expensive than turning on your faucet or using the water bottle refill stations. So it's an interesting situation. It is so convenient. I understand that's at least the belief that going to the refrigerator and pulling out a bottle of water, and yet often right near the refrigerator is the tap where you could turn on and fill up a glass. So there's a lot to be considered in this world of bottled water. So then what about, those are the things we put into our bodies. What about the things we put onto? Actually, I have a question. I'm really intrigued. So for the folks, and again, this is not shaming, this is my curiosity. So folks who use bottled water here at college, why do you choose that? And I'm not going to shame you, I promise. Why do you choose bottled water?
Convenience.
Convenience. What do you mean convenience? What's convenient about?
Water bottles. I
I'm s-
mean, for one, like for example, if you're going around or just walking, they're quick grab and go. Other than that, they're not biodegradable, which is unfortunate. Certain brands I do believe are, but there's a recycle can everywhere you go, depending on where you're at. And to double it, people use it as trash, like to leave it. So I wouldn't just say also convenience, but I guess just availability,
Mhm.
in other words.
Yeah, rather than having a water bottle that you carry and refill, it's more convenient, is what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. What else?
Personally, my house at home is on a well, so I just hate the taste of city water. So I would much rather drink bottled water because I just think it tastes disgusting out of the water fountain.
So different places have different taste profiles depending on the water where you are. Here, in this area that we have this shale, and the water here probably tastes different to you than the water at home. And so that's an interesting, so well water, and wondering about what options could be available. I don't know. It's just an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, I had something pretty similar to that I mean for me personally I don't notice it as much, but definitely some people have preferences in terms of how it tastes because sometimes if the water's too brackish or like, tastes kind of strange, then they prefer bottled water, which most people consider is like a lot cleaner or purer, even if that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
I also know like a lot of people buy distilled water, like to like, if they don't have regular access to like a lot of tap water or um, they need something better for, I guess, cooking or cleaning or things like that. So
Mhm. I wonder what is distilled water? Does that mean the chlorine has been taken out of it?
frankly, I don't know.
Which if you just leave your water bottle on the counter overnight, then the whatever the chlorine is in there actually bubbles out because it's a gas. So when you come down in the morning and there's bubbles, in your glass, it's because that it's the chlorine, and if you tap it, then it rises to the surface and then that goes away. So if it's a matter of distilling, that's interesting. Yeah. So just something for your consideration. So those are things that we take into our body. We'll talk about now. Somebody brought up what we put onto our bodies. And so thinking about all of the products that are available that go from the shelves to our home cabinets and then onto our skin, right? If you think about the vast number of these, we have shampoo, toothpaste, soap, deodorant, hair conditioner, lip balm, sunscreen, body lotion, shaving products, cosmetics, hair products, makeups, concealers, aftershaves, perfumes, colognes, creams. On average, females use 12 products, and they have usually 12 or more ingredients each. Males on average use 6 products. So what's in there and where does it go then? We put it onto our skin, the largest organ on our body, 16 square feet, and it's highly absorbent. So thinking about the skin, the cells comprising the outermost layer of skin are almost exclusively supplied with external oxygen. Depending on what is on your skin, it may only go into the layers of your skin, or it may go all the way into your bloodstream, down there deeper where the blood vessels are. So medicine can be administered through the skin, that makes sense, by ointments or means of the adhesive patches. And it takes about 28 seconds for things to start going through your skin and into your body. So in order to figure out what's safe, how safe, this is a website that you can use to look those up. Personal care products are manufactured with about 10,500 different chemicals, some of which are known or suspected carcinogens, toxic to the reproductive system, or known to disrupt the endocrine system. We'll talk about that more in just a few minutes. Though some companies make products that are so safe we can eat them, others choose to use dangerous ingredients like coal tar and formaldehyde. The interesting thing is that here in the United States, no pre-market safety testing is required. Less than 20% of these chemicals are assessed for health effects in the body. So when risky chemicals are used, the stakes are pretty high, right? These aren't trace contaminants, but major ingredients in what they are using. But then this also begs the question of, if I'm going to use them, why? Why am I using these products? And so I had a student that was pretty reflective about this question, and I'm going to tell you her story after we watch this short video. Why do we put them on? Again, thinking back in time, 99% of these products didn't exist when your great-grandparents were around. So we've added them to our culture because of this perception of beauty. So this is Caitlin, and she was thinking about the influence of makeup. She wrote this in her journal, and I read it with her permission. As a woman in America, I was taught that makeup is supposed to be some symbol of feminism and beauty, and I started applying it as soon as my parents allowed. I welcomed it as part of my womanhood. However, in recent months, I've begun to see the ridiculousness of it, as it is used to create a kind of alternate identity. For years, I've used it to make my face look better, while what I was really doing was hiding or creating a mask to hide behind. My makeup allowed me to live a lie. So I finally decided to do something heroic, namely to remove makeup from my routine. This has meant convincing myself not to go to the makeup bag if I feel like my face is particularly unimpressive or unattractive on a certain day. So now in the morning, I stand in front of the mirror and look at myself in the eyes and take in what is actually my face. I tell myself that this face holds heritage, history, genetics, and individuality. If I, along with others, cannot accept it for face value, then I am failing to appreciate the woman I am. Walking around all day without any makeup has been an enlightening experience. If I need to rub my eyes or if it starts to rain all of a sudden, I need not worry about smudging it, and I can comfort myself in knowing that my current appearance is all me with no help. I've been forcing myself to maintain solid, confident eye contact with others so they too can take in an unenhanced face, and most of the time they accept it. It turns out my face does not need black lines and red accents. That was all a culturally imposed theory. My face no longer belongs to the corporations selling artificial enhancers. I am reclaiming it and returning it back to its home, the earth. It turns out that nature, the nature that is me, needs no help from Maybelline to be complete. And she made more changes in order to use less product and to distinguish that her identity was not based on her looks. She also changed her hairstyle. So what's happened for Caitlin is that she questioned, she reflected. This might look a little bit like that way back at the beginning, the scientific method. She felt, she made a choice, and then she acted, right? So considering how we can make these changes and be happier and healthier for them. right? Sandra Steingraber, she got bladder cancer at age 20 because of vehicle exhaust. So this ties in to the connection with Thon pretty tightly. So an area that was dominated by industrial agriculture and manufacturing. She, once in remission, she has spent her life exploring what's going on, these environmental links to cancer and human health. So she decided to do some mapping, cancer mapping. This is the book she wrote, Living Downstream. But she did some mapping and it looked like this. So bladder cancer cases related to vehicle exhaust, related to chemicals that are put on farming plots. And so she's discovered that there is a direct link between areas that use these application of agricultural-based pesticides as well as road pollution, and she could link where the bladder cancer cases are. Years later, she was becoming a mom, and she wrote this book called Having Faith, An Ecologist's Journey to Motherhood. So an idea of the understanding that what's in our body gets passed to the baby inside. So if there are toxins in the environment, then the baby inside can be exposed to those as well. So it's an obscene dilemma. We shouldn't have to choose whether to have children or not, or where to have them based on what's happening in the environment. Chemicals often found in bodies include pesticides and dry cleaning fluids, cosmetic additives, termite poisons, flame retardants. Flame retardants are typically added to industrial and consumer products to meet flammability standards, things like furniture, textiles, electronics, and building products like insulation. So that's how it ends up in our bodies. Toilet cleansers, as you mentioned, perchlorate. Perchlorate's interesting. The dominant use of perchlorate is for propellants in rockets and fireworks and weapons and the manufacture of matches. And yet it's also used to control the static electricity in food packaging. Sprayed onto or into containers, it stops statically charged food from clinging to the plastic or paper cardboard surface, like the cereal in those bags. Okay. So, and then there's BPA, that's in plastic. And then PFAS. PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. There's lots of information in the news right now about forever chemicals. They're widely used, long-lasting chemicals. We'll go ahead and watch this video about them.
Experts are sounding the alarm about human-made chemicals known as forever chemicals, which are linked to cancer and other illnesses. More than 95% of all Americans tested have detectable levels in their blood. CBS's Roxana Severa traveled to Michigan to take an in-depth look at the contamination of freshwater fish. One environmental group calls it the tip of a toxic iceberg.
On Michigan's Grand River, biologists are fishing for chemicals. These freshwater fish will be tested for PFAS, a family of toxic compounds that last so long in the environment. And in people, they've been called forever chemicals. For decades, PFAS have been widely used to put the non-stick in cookware and to make stain and waterproof fabrics, firefighting foam, and even cosmetics.
They've really contaminated fish everywhere.
Climatologist Dan Brown showed us a stretch of the Huron River near Detroit, where a nearby auto parts plant discharged so much PFAS into the water, the state says the fish aren't safe to eat. How widespread is the problem across the United States?
The Huron River, I think, is one of the canaries in the coal mine. I think we're just now seeing the tip of the iceberg. We're finding PFAS here in all the fish that we sampled. I think any rivers throughout most of the United States are going to find similar levels of PFAS.
A recent study of freshwater fish samples collected by the EPA found it's an issue in almost every state. David Andrews is one of the authors.
Nearly every single sample had PFAS in it, and at levels that consuming a single serving of fish would be equivalent to a year of contaminated water.
Now, for the first time, the federal government is proposing strict regulations limiting PFAS in drinking water, more than 90% lower than previous recommendations. For now, though, states essentially make their own rules. Abigail Hendershot leads Michigan's efforts to find and fix PFAS pollution.
The easy thing for consumers to understand is, has my lake been tested? Has my river been tested? So when it comes to public health and fish consumption, we want to make sure people are thinking about this holistically.
Many companies are phasing out certain kinds of PFAS, but many more remain in use.
The longer we use PFAS, the longer we're gonna poison ourselves.
A threat that could last forever. Roxana Severi, CBS News, Milford, Michigan.
So Sandra's story is that she was diagnosed, and then she questioned, and then she studied, and then she chose to act, right? She's still a fierce fighter for the environmental challenges, such as fracking and climate change, climate injustice. So what happens in these chemicals as they enter our bodies, they're going to go to our spots where hormones are received. So we have these hormone places that are made in our bodies, right? In our sex hormone or sex organs, pancreas, adrenal glands, parathyroid. So this is where our hormones are made. And then they also send and receive those hormones throughout our body. But what's happening is that they fit. These little nanoplastics and other chemicals fit into our bodies just like those hormones do. They're mimicking the shapes, and so they fit. They go into our bodies and start affecting us in ways that we don't know. So all these different places, right, that we're getting exposed and not understanding how it's affecting our bodies. One consideration is that scientists are warning of a sperm count crisis. Biggest ever study, they studied 25,000 men around the world and discussed that a drop of over 50% of sperm in the last 50 years, so potentially impacting global fertility. There are other possibilities too, lifestyle factors that have changed over the last 50 years, obesity, poor diet, other issues. And so these are things that we need to be aware of. I titled this class, The Giant Experiment. So talk to your neighbor about what's coming up for you at this point.
Yeah, I think
Is there anybody that would like to speak to this? This is one of the worst days of my yearly, work, is telling you about this. I just needed to say that. It's really hard.
So I'm someone who thinks about this stuff a lot just because of like my mom and then like my friend circle, I guess. And I think like a big struggle is that you can often become really overwhelmed and like helpless because we live in a society where like unless you're like you make everything by yourself or you're like insanely wealthy, it's really hard to limit the toxins that you're around. And I don't know, like I find myself obsessing too much sometimes, but I try not. But it's like one thing that we were talking about is like what I try to do is like even if like my mindset is like even if I can change like one thing, one less toxin, like and in a way that doesn't change my lifestyle, like I'm still helping my body. And that helps me not be overwhelmed. So like recent change is I stopped using body wash and started using like liquid Castile soap, which is like it just has a lot less chemicals in it. So like just things like simple swaps that like don't overwhelm you is like the thing that like helps me not get overwhelmed.
Yeah, there are choices. I really appreciate what you just said. Thank you. So awareness is the first part, right? So that's why I have to tell you about it, because otherwise you might not know. And when you don't know, then you don't have power to change things. But when you do know, you can do some of your own research. You can figure out what are those simple swaps that can be made to eliminate or to decrease what's happening in your personal environment. This is a real challenge, right? It's something that I think about for my kids too. And so I'd like to tell you, I'm not a salesperson for this app. So, but something that I have found really helpful is the Yucca app. You can scan the barcode of different foods, different personal products, and it will tell you what's in them. And it gives you a very fast report about what's unhealthy in them, the red lights, and then the green lights. So that all those chemical names that can be so confusing, what is good, what's bad, they all sound weird, but this will break it down for you so that you can really identify options. So I have found this to just be really helpful as I move through the store. The big point of this class is awareness and the idea that you have the choice to act. These are two ordinary people who were put in situations and they had the opportunity to make a change. So you can ask the obvious questions. Why makeup? Why bottled water? Why bladder cancer, right? Why? So all kinds of questions to be asked. The common attribute here goes back to what we talked about the other day about being in crisis, is that it takes courage. It takes courage to act. These folks, they were refused to be silenced by fear. So fear, pain, if we feel open to the multitude of ecological problems. We fear humiliation and shame if we get emotional about these things. We fear that if we speak, we'll be judged as being odd or overly emotional or impractical. And so just think about where maybe action is possible for you and your friend groups. That's pretty cool when you're all doing something together. That's really powerful. Thank you very much. I hope you have a beautiful day. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was like glaring at people in the middle back there.